everybody. It is I, the Nomad, coming to you live from the wastelands of the internet to bring you the news. Which unfortunately is not necessarily the best news, especially considering the start of the day. All right. There was a supposed protest, against ICE that was paid for, where thousands of people in Minneapolis showed up. Right, they're claiming tens of thousands, but I don't know if I'd say go that far. There were quite a few though, and in the dead of winter. Now, personally, if it was up to me, just so you understand, I would have brought out the fire hoses, put it on, wide dispersers, and wetted the entire area down. That's just me. Now, if it was that is only if it got violent. Number one, and number two is if they didn't have a valid, what do you call it, permit. Is the word I'm looking for, to be there. Which is something that a lot of people don't understand. When you have one of these quote unquote rallies or one of these quote unquote peaceful protests, you're supposed to get permits ahead of time. Most people do. All right. Most people understand that. Many, unfortunately, do not. They think that they can just go in there, block roads however they want, and no one should care. But that's not the case. Now, the sad news that I was referring to is this. Breaking news: man dies after being shot by federal agents in South Minneapolis. A man reportedly died after being shot by federal agents in the Eat Street neighborhood of South Minneapolis on Saturday morning. Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara told the Minnesota Star Tribune that the victim had died about an hour after the shooting near Nicollet Avenue and 26th Street. A reporter who was near the scene said an agent opened fire at the man outside the Glam Doll Donuts at around 9 a.m. Video from our reporter reveals that multiple shots were fired, with the agent believed to be just a few feet away from the man when he was struck, apparently in the chest. The man was seen unconscious on the ground, and responders were carrying out chest compressions. Immediately after our reporter approached the scene, an agent was heard yelling for help and scissors to open the victim's shirt. Agents told our reporter that they had immediately called 911 for assistance. New video uploaded to Reddit shows several federal agents struggling with a man outside Glamdall, during which the shot was fired, followed by multiple shots fired at the man as he lay on the ground. Somehow, you know, it tells me something was going on here. It appears that an agent used a gun to hit the man multiple times in the head before the first shot was fired. Okay, there is a video of this. All right, they are dragging him, at which point we don't know what else is going on. Okay, I find it interesting that they're trying to subdue this man, and then all of a sudden shots ring out, which means he either grabbed a gun or attempted to sit up there and produce a gun or a weapon of some sort. Now, I will say this, okay, because I do think it's important to point out some of these things. Right, the federal government is not perfect, okay, and federal people are people, which means can they do some bad things? The answer to that, of course, is yes. But it isn't going to matter. Right now, all the screaming about, oh, ICE this and ICE that, these people know what they're doing and they're not being honest. Of course, they don't, the media never puts people on like me. They never do. And I'm going to be real blunt with everybody. If you don't want to get shot by the police, all right, then and it happens more often than people realize. Obey what they tell you. The moment you attempt to get physical with the police, they are going to bring overwhelming force, period. Your rights, okay, may be being violated, but you know what? You don't have the authority to adjudicate that. Do you get what I'm saying here? You can be arrested and detained, okay, by the police. And you may feel that your rights are being violated, but you don't have the authority to adjudicate that. And I hate to tell you this for all you nitwits out there. Not only don't you have the authority to adjudicate it, okay, you don't have the rights that a lot of people think they have. Because if you've looked at what's been adjudicated before, you will discover very quickly that detention by the police up to 48 hours without being charged doesn't violate your rights. Think on that. Now, I'm not saying that your rights couldn't have been violated in some other manner. But once again, police can detain you for up to 48 hours without ever charging you. But I would sit up there and, at this point, with the situation that just happened, I would be very reticent, seriously, to wait for the facts of the case to come out. This is the kind of garbage that goes on, though. The way these people talk about this kind of stuff. And it's unfortunate. All right, let's get on to the regular news, okay? Russian air attack on Ukraine knocks out power for millions. Russia launched another vast attack on Ukraine's energy sector in the small hours of Saturday, rocking Kiev with explosions throughout the night and leaving 1.2 million properties without power countrywide. Nearly 6,000 buildings in the capital were left without heating on Saturday morning as temperatures hovered around minus 10 degrees Celsius. 14 degrees Fahrenheit. Many residents' apartments were already freezing cold from the disruption to the city's central heat distribution system following previous attacks. Moscow has carried out the strikes as trilateral U.S. brokered talks between the U.S. and Ukraine continued into the second day with no sign of compromise on Friday. Kiev Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said one person was killed in the capital city and 4 injured, including 3 being treated in a hospital, while 19 people, including a child, were wounded in Ukraine's second city, Kharkiv. Russia, which has pummeled Ukraine's power grid since its full-scale invasion in 2022, is conducting its heaviest bombardment campaign on energy facilities this winter, leaving people across the Ukraine with only a few hours of power a day and some without heat or water. Over 800,000 people in the capital and another 400,000 in the northern region of Cherniv were without power after the latest attack. Okay. The this is war. This is what war is. All right. And I've tried to explain this to people. All right. The When you're in a war, okay, it's not pretty. And I know a lot of people are like, well, that's civilians. You're talking about civilians. Okay. This is a war. Power is used by both civilians and soldiers, so therefore, since it's a dual use kind of thing, they're taking it out. And they're trying to put pressure on the Ukrainians, right, for territorial concessions if they continue. Nobody wants to listen to this. This is war. So the question is, okay, you don't like what the Russians are doing. Yeah, I get it. I don't like it either. Here's my question to you, though. What are you willing to do about it? Because unless the Europeans get serious, nothing's going to happen. Unless the NATO nations outside of the United States actually enforce the sanctions that they all supposedly agreed to, none of this is going to happen. And believe me, the NATO nations are not together on this. Spain outright said they don't care. They're taking Russian gas and oil. They don't care what the rest of the EU says. And they're not the only ones. France has finally moved to actually do something in support of this stuff. All right, when they seized an oil tanker from Russia in the Mediterranean. They finally did something. Up to that point, they haven't done a damn thing. And it's not like they couldn't have been seizing these oil tankers for the past 4 years. So why weren't they? Well, we're going to ramp up this. Everyone keeps talking about sanctions, 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 and how much the sanctions are hurting Russia. Really? Doesn't seem to be hurting Russia to the degree people keep claiming that it is. When are the Europeans going to live up to their commitments? Because they never will. Oh, they promised we're going to increase our defense budgets by 5%. Something else that the Spanish said, screw you, we're going to stay here and just be slugs. We don't care about our own defense. We're not increasing our defense budgets to live up to the NATO commitments. Spain actually said that, and they have no intention of doing it. Now, all the other NATO countries, well, most of them said, yeah, we'll start. Well, where is it? Where's the great increase in the Wehrmacht? Where's the great increase in the Danish military forces? They found an extra dog sled to send to freaking Greenland. Oh, we're going to put a couple of our coast cutter and our patrol ships out there. Oh, yeah, that'll work. That'll stop the Russians and the Chinese. They have no problem coming together to spill bile at whoever they want to, normally the United States, at the drop of a hat. But when it comes to actual doing something and paying for something, living up to their commitments, where are they? Where are they? Can someone tell me? We have approximately 330 million people in the United States. Okay? 330. Germany has a population of 84 million, approximately. A little bit more. Supposedly. Okay? These are facts coming from the internet, so take them for what it's worth. So Germany has a quarter of the number of the manpower that the United States has. So let's see here. I just cannot type today. All right. Right now, the U.S. has 1.3 million active duty personnel. 1.3 million active, not reserve or anything else. Active duty personnel across the Navy, the Army, the Marines, and the Air Force. All right. The Germans have 180,000 approximately. Note, they're a quarter of our population, the U.S. population, and yet they field only a tenth of active duty personnel. A tenth. And even then, do I believe it? No. Yeah, I don't. Oh, I know, man. You can't say that. There's no reason to doubt. There's lots of reasons to doubt that. If you have 180,000 active duty personnel, all right, why is it you only have approximately 400 to 500 main battle tanks? We have 10,000. They have 500. You can't trust the Europeans. You can't trust them. Why do I focus on Germany? Because between Germany and France, they are the EU. They make all the decisions in the EU. That's the reality. Meanwhile, Russia, from Pravda, sanctions meet reality. Why the West cannot replace Russian uranium. Western efforts to reduce reliance on Russian nuclear fuel reveal deep contradictions between political declarations and the industrial realities created by decades of strategic choices. For several years, countries of Europe, of the European Union, and the United States have publicly declared their intention to reduce cooperation with Russia in the nuclear sector. In practice, however, many of these decisions taken have been fragmented and poorly coordinated. The inconsistency has generated imbalances in the nuclear fuel market and aggravated structural problems that were largely created by the Western states themselves. So far, this is an accurate statement. Russia has maintained a stable position in global uranium enrichment market for years. The position is the result of long-term investment, continuous technological development, and preservation of full production chains. Ding, 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 ding. The rest of that nonsense is this. All right. But the preservation of full production chains, we have reduced ours. This is very true. During the same period, Western countries steadily reduced their own enrichment capabilities. These decisions were driven by considerations of economic efficiency and environmental policy. They were not driven by economic efficiency. They were completely driven by the environmental policies. And this is the problem. To say that the United States or that the West can't compete, all right, or cannot replace it, however, belies the fact that we could ramp up production damn near overnight if we really so desired. Now, they're terrified of that. And in fact, part of the West includes Japan. And Japan hasn't really reduced its capacity that much to enrich. I mean, it's amazing. Let me get this little email out there. Sorry for the quick delay. But the thing is, you got to have the political will to do it. At some point, the world is going to have to, and especially the left, they're going to have to, and I know they don't want to, right? But they're going to have to sit up there and come to the sad conclusion that you need nuclear power, all right, if you want clean energy. You can't have both. You can't have it where you don't have nuclear power, all right, but you do have clean energy. Wind farming, solar farming, none of that is going to produce ever produce enough electrical power for the needs of the world. It's never going to happen. Let's go on to some more stories. Trump threatens Canada 100% tariffs and warns the nation will be eaten alive in a deal with China. He's 100% right. President Trump has warned Canada would be eaten alive if it strikes a deal with China, threatening 100% tariffs on all Chinese goods entering the United States. On Saturday, Trump launched a sharp warning on Truth Social to Canada and Prime Minister Mark Carney over plans to make the country a drop-off port for Chinese imports into the United States, saying they are so sorely mistaken. And that's exactly what Carney was trying to do. That is exactly what that asshole was trying to do. Well, okay, well, what we'll do is we'll become a transshipment point for Chinese goods so that they can bypass U.S. tariffs. That's what they were trying to do. And so he makes a massive deal with China, okay, thinking that the United States isn't aware of what it's trying to do. Same thing with Mexico, by the way. China will eat Canada alive and completely devour it, including the destruction of their businesses and social fabric and general way of life, the president wrote. If Canada makes a deal with China, it will immediately be hit with a 100% tariff against all Canadian products and goods coming into the United States, he said. Trump's latest threat comes days after Carney's speech to global leaders at Davos, Switzerland, where he warned that the post-World War II rules-based order led by the United States and its allies is fading. Yes, it is fading because the United States is tired of being the frickin' punching bag for you bastards and sitting up there just taking the short end of the stick just so that we can have, you got to make this deal because we're so poor and we're so this. No, we were there to sit up there and bring you up, and we made deals that were well within your favor strictly for the purposes so that you can recover from the devastation of World War II. And instead of saying, okay, we can stand on our own anymore, what you did is you kept sitting there taking advantage of the United States. Again and again and again. The numbers I just talked about in Germany are an example of it. But the Canadians are no friggin' different. Take advantage of the United States, sit up there and fund our wonderful welfare that we constantly sit up there and talk about how, oh, we got socialized medicine here and it all works wonderfully. Oh, really? How are you paying for it? Oh, we do it through taxes. Okay, you do it through taxes. How are you defending yourself? Well, we can't defend ourselves. That's up to the U.S. to defend us. And the Canadians are all elbows up, elbows up. Well, you know what? Gloves are off. Time to drop the gloves, Canada. You want to try to play us for fools? That's over now. Carney and Trudeau are the same type of person. Try to sit up there and sucker the U.S. or somebody else into these deals. I have said this for many, many years now. The United States needs to pull out of the UN, and then the United States needs to pull out of NATO. Until these people start acting like allies instead of, oh no, we only look out for ourselves. Okay, when the United States starts to look out for itself, what do you get? You get Carney bitching about the United States. How dare they look out for themselves? You're supposed to take it in the shorts for us. Screw you. Right now, the economy of the Canadians is cratering. Because there's not anyone who thinks that you're going to sit up there and live on the largesse of the United States forever. That has ended. Now, the reason it's ended isn't good for America either, because we have spent ourselves into massive debt doing the same kind of stupid policies that the Europeans have. And the Democrats looking at that keep going, we got to spend more, we got to spend more. We got to tax more, we got to tax more. Well, look at all these other countries. Yeah, look at them and look at how they're able to sit up there and afford all of that. It's because they spend almost nothing on their own frickin' national security in comparison to everything else. A quarter of the U.S. budget is for national defense and the national defense only. What a lot of people don't understand in America, the rest of that 75% is all on bullshit largesse programs. And we're in debt for it. If you take a look at the budgets of the leftist countries like Canada and everything else, their military budgets comprise less than 5% in some cases. So they have a problem. How do they continue spending on these social programs and ramp up their military levels to an equivalency to the United States, which is what we're demanding? And we're not talking about equivalencies to say, okay, they have the same number of planes, same number of men in arms, et cetera, et cetera. No, we're saying if you have a population X, this is what your military budget should be. If you have a quarter of the U.S. population, then your military budget should be a quarter of what the U.S. spends. And it's not even close around the world. If you're a tenth, which Canada is, of the U.S. budget or of the U.S. population, you should be spending about a tenth of what the U.S. spends. But it's not even close. And they all know it. The Europeans are getting treated by the United States and Canadians, right? Just like they've treated us. With the same mindset now. And they don't like it. They don't like it. They don't like getting treated the same way they treat us. And they've been treating us like this for close to 70 years, 80 years now. A reckoning was going to happen, and it is happening. Enjoy. And China is in the middle of trying to fix massive problems. Don't believe me? Take a look at this. Xi's purge of China's military brings down its top general. The ouster of General Zhang Zhao, I'm not trying to use Zhao, I'm Xi, I'm not trying to butcher the name, I don't know how to pronounce it, was second only to Xi Jinping in the military hierarchy, marks the total annihilation of the high command, one analyst said. China's top general, second only to Xi Jinping, the nation's leader in the military command, has been put under investigation and accused of grave violations of discipline and the law, the Ministry of National Defense said on Saturday. The most stunning escalation yet in Mr. Xi's purge of the People's Liberation Army elite. The general, Zhang Yuzai, all right, is a vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, the Communist Party body that controls China's military forces. Another member of the commission, General Liu Zhenli, who leads the military's Joint Staff Department, is also under investigation, the Defense Ministry said. Its announcement did not say what either general was alleged to have done wrong. Zhang's downfall, few, if any, Chinese officials placed publicly under investigation or later declared innocent, is the most drastic step so far in Mr. Xi's years-long campaign to root out what he described as corruption and disloyalty in the military's senior ranks. It's all the more astonishing because General Zhang seemed to be a confidant of Mr. Xi, who has known him for decades. All right, first of all, you don't know if what's really going on with this, and this is very true. All right, you don't really know what's really going on, but it's possible, okay, that Xi is trying to protect his friend, so he says, okay, well, we investigated him, and we find out there's nothing wrong with him. That's probably not likely. Xi Jinping right now is trying to consolidate power because there are rampant problems across the nation. And Xi had it in his head that he would go down as the great leader of China who reunified Taiwan. So he had a plan to attack Taiwan. This is my belief. All right. And then found out that his military, which has given all these promises about how great they are, and how they could take Taiwan in a matter of days, only to find out, well, shit, that's all bullshit. What just recently happened, folks? For those who don't know, what just recently happened in the Middle East? We'll be talking about the Middle East in a little bit as well. But what just recently happened? For those who don't understand what I'm getting at, recently the B2s went in and bombed the nuclear facilities of Iran. Totally wiped them out. Additionally, we did a snatch and grab on Nicolas Maduro and his wife. Both of those nations were using China's air defense systems and following Chinese protocols, and they were useless. against the United States and against United States technology. Useless. These things have been promised to be the best things since sliced bread. They could easily compete with the United States. But they failed. So people start looking, okay, you said all this stuff, you've given us all this thing, but in reality, when push comes to shove, are we really capable of taking on the United States? Because that's what you're going to have to do if you try to take Taiwan. Xi Jinping understands this. If you want to take Taiwan, you're going to have to be able to take on the United States militarily to a significant extent. Now, that's not saying that China can't take the United States on to a degree. But in order to be successful, you not only got to take on the United States, you got to take on the United States allies. And the two biggest allies in that region are Taiwan, okay, and Japan. And I think Japan especially rattles China because Japan's technology is close to equivalent to the United States. Now, militarily, they're not as experienced, and experience counts for quite a bit. Don't misunderstand it, people. But when your systems that you're relying upon, that you've put all this money into, with all these bragging rights, fail time and time again against U.S. military hardware, there's a comeuppance happening. Pakistan is which bought a bunch of the Chinese jets to replace their American fleet because America batted around the world, is now in buyer's remorse, trying to get back to the F-16s that they basically mothballed because their engines are constantly down and they have no logistics chain. There's been all sorts of reports about Pakistan, the Pakistani military going, what the hell is this? And India is just laughing at them because no matter what you want to say, China's military, in comparison to the military hardware that the Russians have, well, it's like night and day. From their perspective, Russian hardware works. Chinese hardware doesn't. Neither work when it comes to the Americas, but that's a separate issue in comparison. Continue around the world. Another deadly incident in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli military said that it once again killed several Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. The army announced on Saturday that forces in northern Gaza Strip identified several terrorists who had crossed the so-called yellow line and planted an explosive device. They posed an immediate threat and were killed by the Air Force after being identified. This information cannot be currently independently verified. Israel has declared the so-called yellow line to be the new border with the Gaza Strip. This line marks the Israeli military withdrawal's position as part of the ceasefire against the Islamic Palestinian terrorists Hamas. It is marked by yellow concrete posts and signs. They have been repeatedly deadly incidents since the ceasefire began on October 10th. According to several sources, Israel controls slightly more than half of the Gaza Strip, which is around 41 kilometers long, all right, and between 6 and 12 kilometers wide. It's it's basically 15 miles long and 2 miles wide. 2 to 4 miles wide, depending upon where. It's not very large. But it's a concentration camp, so nobody cares, right? I mean, isn't that what they were calling it? Isn't that what the left called this, as a concentration camp? Personally, I would take everything down there and just sit them and put in tents. And I would tell people where they're going to live, how they're going to live, what they're going to live on, right? I would take away everything in there. All the people would be rounded up and marched through things. And if they don't, that's fine, because we're just going to bring the buildings down on top of them. These people don't care. These people would rather their children starve to death, okay, than go to Israelis for food. They showed that during the war. They are willing to have their own children starve to death than to stop supporting Hamas. Then that's a conscious decision that they're making. Oh no, man, they're afraid of Hamas. They're afraid of this. Oh, they're more afraid of Hamas than they are of getting bombed by the Israelis. Huh? What does that tell you? The problem is their attitude. The problem is their belief system, and they're not going to give it up. Iran's Revolutionary Guard commander warns the U.S. his force has its finger on the trigger. The commander of Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard, which was key to putting down recent nationwide protests in the crackdown that left thousands dead, warned that his force is more ready than ever finger on the trigger as the U.S. warships headed toward the Middle East. Noor News, a news outlet close to Iran's Supreme National Security Council, reported on its Telegram channel that the Commander General Mohammed Pakpour, I'm not trying to butcher your name, all right, intentionally, I don't really care about doing it, however, warned the United States and Israel to avoid any miscalculation. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard and Dear Iran stand more ready than ever, finger on the trigger, to execute the orders and directives of the Commander-in-Chief. Noor News quoted Pakpour as saying, tensions remain high between Iran and the United States. In the wake of the bloody crackdown, it remained high. The tensions are no different than they were after we frickin' bombed their frickin' uranium facilities. It's no different. It's no different. Here's a look at U.S. assets heading to the Middle East. The Pentagon is sending U.S. military assets into the Middle East this week, including an aircraft carrier group and its thousands of troops, as President Donald Trump indicated he was maintaining the possibility of strikes on Iran amid its crackdown on protests. We have a massive fleet heading in that direction, and maybe we won't have to use it, Trump told reporters Thursday, saying that they were going just in case. Okay, here's the thing. If you're trying to topple Iran, you can't do it with a single military strike. You're going to have to do it with multiple military strikes over several weeks. Every day. Well, for several weeks. To actually put an end to the Islamic, all right, and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And you've got to wipe them all out. All of them. And you have to frickin' crater, all right, and sink every frickin' boat that the Iranians have, including those subs that they've purchased. You've got to put them at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. You can't do that with a single military strike from the United States every few weeks. You're going to have to put on pressure, a lot of pressure, air power wise, all right, consistently over a long period of time. And we had removed our presence from the Middle East for a variety of reasons. The Maduro issue was only one of them. The Chinese issues are another. A third issue is lack of readiness because we had to refit several of our carrier groups at home. And it's not a quick turnaround. It's a big ocean, and we got a lot of enemies. And there are enemies regardless of whether or not we're playing nice in the world. And if you don't believe me, all you have to do is think back. Okay, when did Russia invade Ukraine? When Biden was in office. Were we bothering anybody at that time? Were we bothering the Russians? No, in fact, we were pulling our assets back. We had just made a hash out of Afghanistan by pulling out of Afghanistan. Unilaterally just said, okay, let's go. Boom. Because we had a leader, all right, who eats tapioca, who was eating tapioca at night and watching the Smurfs. And he thought he was Papa Smurf. La, 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 la. And what did the rest of the world do? Where were the freaking Europeans to sit up there and try and show stability around the world? Where was the great Canadians? What were they doing? What were they doing to add to world security and world stability? Blaming the United States for anything and everything that we did, just like they always do. We step up, we get blamed. You don't step up, we get blamed. We get blamed for everything. Meanwhile, here in the United States, girl jailed for pork chop attack on mother. A Florida teenager is behind bars after striking her mother with a pork chop during a domestic battery, police charge. Farah Keeman, 18, was arrested for battery following a disturbance last night at the Jensen Beach home she shares with the 46-year-old victim. Excuse me, is that Kerman? All right, Keeman is locked up in the Martin County Jail on $2,500 bond, according to a probable cause affidavit. Keeman's mother told cops that she had been involved in a verbal dispute with her daughter, and she said had been drinking alcohol earlier in the day. During that argument, the woman alleged Keeman smacked her in the face and threw a pork chop at her. Police on the scene observed food residue on the victim's left shoulder, which is consistent with her statement. When questioned by cops, Keeman appeared confused and became emotionally upset and began screaming and crying and continued to act uncooperatively. A friend of the victim who was present in the residence recorded video of Keeman striking her mother. Keeman, seen at the left and above, was arrested last year for trespassing on the Jensen Beach Causeway, a day after being issued a trespass warning for a physical altercation with another female. As part of the deferred prosecution agreement, Keeman was ordered to perform 50 hours of community service. It's a troubled young woman who thinks that, rules don't apply to her. Perfect Democrat voter. The Bundesbank. Yes, Bundesbank head condemns action against U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman. This should tell you all you need to know. All right? This should tell you all you need to know. When the Germans are bitching about the U.S. president going after frickin' somebody, you know he's got the right target. The Bundesbank president Joachim Nagel, all right, has condemned the United States government's action against the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. "This is absurd," he told the Tagesspiegel newspaper in an interview published on Saturday. "The way he is being attacked politically shocks me to the core. After all, it was the U.S. that taught Germany the importance of an independent central banks after World War II," Nagel said. U.S. President Donald Trump has been targeting Powell for months with a mixture of public pressure, personal insults, and legal threats. And that's because you're supposed to be independent. You weren't supposed to be political. But good old Powell couldn't help but be the leftist activist that he actually is. And when other leftist activists, Joachim Nagel, when one of his friends is in trouble, oh boy, we got to put a stop to this. We have got to put a stop to this. Boy, howdy. Can't see what's going to happen here. Meanwhile, with more Germans, the German football executive urges World Cup boycott to protest Trump. A senior German football executive has urged Europe to consider boycotting the 2026 FIFA World Cup as U.S. President Donald Trump's escalating rhetoric over Greenland and broader foreign policy moves spark unease across the continent. Oh no, we are going to be held accountable for our actions. Oka Gottlieb, president of the Bundesliga club St. Pauli and vice president of the German Football Association, said in an interview with German media that the time has come to seriously consider and discuss a boycott, comparing the current moment with the Cold War era Olympic boycotts of the 80s. Okay? What were the justifications for the boycotts of the Olympic Games in the 80s? Gottlieb told Hamburger Morgenpost. Well, what was the boycott in the 80s? You do realize that it was only the United States that boycotted. You do realize that it was only the United States boycotted after the invasion and the butchery that began to take place in Afghanistan, right? By my reckoning, the potential threat is greater now than it was then. We need to have this discussion. Go screw yourself. How is the situation greater now? How is the threat greater now? I can tell you why he thinks that. Because the United States is saying, you know what, we can pick up our ball and go home. See, the U.S. saying we're going to take our ball and go home. We're going to reduce our, we're going to reduce our forces since you guys aren't living up to your commitments. That's a threat to them. Saying, hey, stand up on your own. That's a threat to them. And he compares that to an outright invasion militarily of Afghanistan by the Russians or the Soviet Union at the time. And like I said, the Germans still didn't boycott. Very few countries boycotted the Russian Olympics. The U.S. did. And the Russians reciprocated, and we're talking about boycotting the Winter Olympics. See, people like this guy is a jackass. He's an outright jackass. They think you can bully the United States into submission, and when you put Democrats in charge, they're more than willing to lick your frickin' boots. Meanwhile, what do we get? Exclusive. Mexico weighs stopping oil shipments to Cuba amid concerns of Trump retaliation. Ding, 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 ding. Another international sanctions being violated by a country, and now they're like, well, wait a minute. The U.S. is serious. They're seizing ships. They're gonna hit us with these sanctions. No shit. The Mexican government is reviewing whether to keep sending oil to Cuba amid growing fears that within President Claudia Sheinbaum's administration that Mexico could face reprisals from the United States over the policy, which is a vital lifeline for the communist-run Caribbean island, according to three sources familiar with the discussions. A U.S. blockade of oil tankers in Venezuela in December and a dramatic capture of President Nicolas Maduro this month have halted Venezuelan oil shipments to Cuba, leaving Mexico as the single largest supplier to the island that suffers from energy shortages and mass blackouts. Mexico's pivotal role in sending oil to Cuba has also put the U.S. southern neighbor in Washington's crosshairs. Donald Trump has stressed Cuba is ready to fall and said in a January 11th Truth Social post, there will be no more oil or money going to Cuba. Zero. There's not supposed to be more money and oil going to Cuba now. Publicly, Sheinbaum said Mexico would continue oil shipments to Cuba, saying they are based on long-term contracts and considered international aid. What the hell you mean international aid? Oil shipments are international aid now. I want you to think on that. A country which can't pay its debts is getting oil shipments from Mexico, which is already poor and out of and having all sorts of issues within its oil infrastructure. In fact, the oil coming out of the country is basically directly under the control of several of the cartels, including the pipelines and whether or not they actually pump oil, depending upon which cartel controls that area. And yet, supposedly, we're supposed to expect, oh no, there won't be any issues there. Huh? Mexico is trying to negotiate a review of the USMCA North American Trade Pact, while also persuading Washington it is doing enough to combat drug cartels and that the United States military action against the groups on Mexican territory is neither welcome nor needed. Really? So you don't have a problem with these cartels running around and controlling everything? Personally, we should just go in there and blow the holy hell out of them, just with air power. Just start wiping them off the face of the earth. It would actually be much easier for the U.S. to do it, all right, than what we're doing in Venezuela. Because we have a border with Mexico and we don't have to go as far. We could very easily declare a no cartel zone, all right, in Mexico and say anybody that we think is a cartel member in this zone here, we're going to wipe out. You can't do that, no man. You can't do that. That would be a serious violation of international law. Oh, but they can violate international law by allowing these criminals to continually activate through this? Really? We can allow them to continue international law? So that we can have people like this here? Monster rock thrower who fractured the skull of an 8-year-old girl on a school bus is an illegal immigrant from Mexico. The maniac accused of hurling a rock at a school bus from a New Jersey Turnpike overpass, fracturing the skull of an 8-year-old girl, is an illegal immigrant from Mexico with a long rap sheet. The Post has learned Hernando Garcia Morales, 40, allegedly threw a baseball-sized stone on January 7th at a bus returning to Teaneck after a field trip to the Liberty Science Center. Garcia Morales told cops he believed the bus was the devil or his enemy when he was arrested 2 days after the attack at a homeless encampment in Palisades Park, New Jersey. Somebody who should have been turned over to ICE immediately. Federal officials told the Post this week that the unhinged menace should never have been in the U.S. to begin with. The Department of Homeland Security does not know when or where Garcia Morales illegally entered the country, but his criminal history in the Garden States stretches back 2 decades. Ice, ice, baby. Back to Spain. More rail chaos in Catalonia after resumption of services. Further rail disruptions had hit the Spanish region of Catalonia just a day after services resumed following a fatal train accident. The government once again calls for a total suspension of the Rodales commuter rail service until full operability of the network can be guaranteed. Meanwhile, travelers were confused by conflicting official statements, with many stranded at stations. The main concern was landslides along the tracks due to heavy rainfall. Experts were to inspect the critical sections of the route during the course of the day. Early in the morning, the regional government initially reported that operations could not be maintained across the entire network for safety reasons, according to the operating company Renfe, all right, and the rail network agency ADIF. A little later, Renfe announced that some trains would be running after all. In the early afternoon, the announcement came that services had been completely suspended again. Local media reported reported fewer travelers than usual had ventured to take a trip on the trains, which are often unreliable even in normal times. Train services in Barcelona area were suspended on Wednesday and Thursday after a local train collided with a collapsed retaining wall on Tuesday evening. The train driver was killed. Dozens of passengers were injured in the accident, which came just days after a major crash in the southern Spain saw 45 people killed and hundreds injured. Something up in Spain. Something up. Something's up. Cops, collegians ID'd in one Ole Miss harass probe. Nude of Mary Kate Cornett distributed via X and Google. Police investigating the cyber stalking of Mary Kate Cornett, the college freshman targeted last year by online rumors about her sex life, identified 2 young men who allegedly disseminated a topless photo of the University of Mississippi student, right, said was taken when she was underage, according to was underage records show. Cornett, 19, was victimized by an online firestorm that apparently began with a February Yik Yak post alleging she had sex with her former boyfriend's father. From there, the spurious claim went viral after it was picked up by the X account MAGA Glendon and then further amplified by sportscaster Pat McAfee, 38, and Barstool sports blogger and trolls Kevin Clancy, 40, and Jack McGuire, 29, Charles Longley, 26. The result, Cornett told police, was her receipt of vile messages from random strangers and constant in-person harassment and cyber harassment, including the full stalking menu, doxing, manipulated photos, AI-generated videos, and messages suggesting that she should kill herself. The abuse was exacerbated by the online sharing of what one Reddit user described as an in-depth manifesto about Cornett that included her leaks and apparent reference to naked photos. After an Oxford Police Department investigation of abuse targeting Cornett was closed, officials released corresponding police reports in response to the Smoking Gun's open records request. The crime description in those records was listed as cyber stalking and email threats of harassment. All right, now this is a pretty woman. She's made obviously some mistakes at some point because she allowed naked pictures of herself to be taken, or took them herself. I don't know anything about the photos themselves. We know very little. Men chasing after beautiful women is not new. Some people became billionaires because of it. Think on that. Good old Mark Zuckerberg created an app which allows men to stalk women on college campuses, which ballooned into Facebook. He's a billionaire because young men want to follow pretty young women. And nobody tried to nip that in the bud at the time. Oh, people once in a while complain here and there. But I think it's something that should be talked about. It's something that we should be addressing. Don't you? We're talking about Venezuela. Trump reveals the post-secret discombobulator weapon was crucial to Venezuelan raid on Maduro. President told the Post that a secret new weapon he calls the discombobulator was essential to the daring U.S. raid that captured Venezuela's drug dealing dictator. Trump boasted that the mysterious weapon made enemy equipment not work when U.S. helicopters swooped into Caracas on January 3rd to arrest Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, on federal drugs and weapons charges. Without using a single American life, the discombobulator, I'm not allowed to talk about it, Trump said during an exclusive interview in the Oval Office. I would love to, the president added before confirming its use in the stealth operation. They never got their rockets off. They had Russian and Chinese rockets. They never got one off, and we came in, pressed buttons, and nothing worked. They were all set for us. Trump commented on the weapon when he was asked about reports this week that the Biden administration purchased a post-energy weapon suspected of being the type used that caused Havana syndrome. Not much is known about the weapon, but those reports followed on-the-ground accounts from Venezuela describing how Maduro's gunmen were brought to their knees, bleeding through the nose and vomiting blood. One member of the deposed strongman's team recounted afterward that suddenly all our radar systems shut down without any explanation. I'm just going to leave it there. Okay. The guards for Maduro have been returned to Cuba. That was an announcement as well. Now, if someone's bleeding through the nose and vomiting, there's a lot of damage that was done to them. Just adding my 2 cents where it is. Other than that, I'm not going to make any more comments. Final story of the day. TSA's most unusual finds of 2025 includes turtles in a bra. The Transportation Security Administration said the most unusual items found at U.S. airport security checkpoints in 2025, including a replica bomb and turtles in a bra. TSA released its list of the top 10 most unusual items seized at airport security in 2025, with a number one spot going to what would appear to be a replica pipe bomb at the Idaho's Boise Airport in May. A TSA explosives specialist responded, assessing the image, and conducted a bag search, discovering PVC pipes and wooden blocks wrapped in paper marked C4 with protruding wires, the TSA said. The explosives expert determined that the items were replicas and not a threat. The passenger said the items were for training aids and abandoned them. This guy, okay, unless he was part of some kind of law enforcement effort or the military, should have been taken into custody. Okay. The agency said that despite the apparent innocent intent, such items are not allowed on planes. Realistic replicas of explosives are not allowed to be allowed in checked or carry-on bags. The TSA Federal Security Director for Idaho, James Spies. Our expertly trained officers take no risks when they screen bags and see an item that could be an explosive. We are grateful that in this case the items were not intended to harm anyone. The rest of the top 25 were turtles found in traveler's pants, more in another's bra at the Newark Liberty International Airport and Miami International Airport, razor blades concealed in clothing at the Denver International Airport, drugs in shoes at the Hawaii's Kona International Airport, a knife in a knee brace at the Illinois Quad Cities International Airport, pills in a shampoo bottle at Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport, a knife in a car seat at Dallas Fort Worth International Airport, bullets in a bottle of Nesquik. All right, at the Miami International Airport, a firearm concealed in a golf bag at the Houston George Bush Intercontinental Airport, and bullets and knives concealed in tin foil in Ohio's Akron Canton Airport and Newark Liberty International Airport. Oh my God. I can't believe this. Absolutely unbelievable to me. What people will do. What people will do when it comes to trying to smuggle in the contraband. A turtle in a bra. I mean, first of all, the first question that comes to mind. The first question that comes to mind is, was the individual wearing the bra, and what were the size of the turtles? Did the person think that this were just patty? Was it to sit up there and give a little titillation to her paramour? That she has these things just roaming around? I'm just curious. I just a bit curious is all as to how that would all play out. So anyway, I thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate you all. All right, this is it's time to for me to go. However, so I'm going to go ahead and end this. Hope you all have a good day, and I will talk